He steps into the modern world with nothing. No legions behind him, no senate to command, no coin in his pocket, no name on any record, no army waiting for orders. Just one man standing in a city that has never heard of Rome. Around him, the world moves by rules he has never seen. Satellites replace scouts. Information travels faster than any horse could ride. Power is no longer measured by conquered land alone, but by technology, economics, information, and influence. Everything that once made Julius Caesar unstoppable is gone. His legions, his wealth, his political machine. All that remains is the one weapon history could never take from him: his mind. And that leaves one question this entire documentary is built to answer. Could Julius Caesar actually conquer the modern world? The first hours would not be dramatic. They would be disorienting. A man who once read the political temperature of Rome by walking through its markets and listening to its crowds would find himself in a world that offers no such clarity. Traffic. Signage in languages he cannot parse. Machines moving without visible drivers. Faces buried in small, glowing screens, ignoring the man beside them entirely. For someone whose entire career was built on reading people, their fears, their loyalties, their weaknesses, this is the first real test. Not a battlefield, a sidewalk, but here is the detail worth sitting with. Caesar was not simply a general. He was, before anything else, a student of systems. He rose in Rome not by brute force, but by understanding exactly how power moved through a society, who held it, who wanted it, and what they were willing to trade for it. That instinct doesn't disappear because the century has changed. Give him a week, not to conquer anything, simply to watch. He would notice quickly that this world runs on a currency older than money: attention. Whoever holds it holds leverage, and whoever can command a crowd, virtually or physically, still commands something Rome would have recognized instantly as power. This is where the modern world and the ancient world quietly rhyme. To understand what Caesar could become here, we first have to ask which of his historical advantages actually survived the jump. Start with the obvious one: his mind for strategy. Caesar's battlefield genius wasn't about numbers. It was about tempo, moving faster than his enemies expected, striking where they were unprepared, and turning chaos into opportunity before his opponents could process what was happening. That is not a Roman skill. That is a cognitive one. It applies to markets, to negotiations, to elections, to war rooms of any era. Next, his understanding of narrative. Caesar didn't just win battles, he wrote about them. His own accounts of the Gallic Wars were designed for a Roman audience back home, shaping how his victories were perceived before his rivals could spin them differently. In an information age built entirely on narrative control, this instinct becomes, if anything, more valuable than it was in his own time, not less. Then there's charisma, the kind that isn't loud but magnetic. Historical accounts consistently describe a man who could walk into a room of skeptics and leave with allies. Modern psychology has a name for what he seemed to intuitively understand: mirroring, timing, controlled vulnerability, the strategic use of confidence. These are trainable skills today. Caesar appears to have had them naturally. And finally, patience, disguised as boldness. Despite his reputation for daring, Caesar was a master of the long game. His rise through Roman politics took over a decade of careful positioning before he ever crossed a river that made him famous. He understood that most power is built quietly and spent loudly only once. These four traits: tempo, narrative control, magnetism, and patience form the toolkit he would carry into this world. Not weapons, instruments. The question is what he could actually build with them. Starting from zero. Influence in the modern world does not require a title. It requires reach. And reach is now something any individual can theoretically acquire without land, without wealth, without permission from any ruling body. A fact that would likely fascinate Caesar more than almost anything else about this new century. In ancient Rome, gaining a public voice required either birthright, wealth, or years of political favor trading. Today, a compelling communicator with the right instincts can build an audience in months. Caesar's core skill: reading a crowd and giving it exactly what it didn't know it wanted to hear, translates almost directly onto modern platforms built for exactly that kind of performance. He would not need to explain who he was. He would need to demonstrate what he could do. Picture the path realistically. Not a throne, a following, commentary on strategy, power, leadership, delivered with the calm authority of someone who has clearly lived through situations most people only theorize about. Audiences today are hungry for decisive thinking in an era that often feels indecisive. Caesar's mind, applied to modern problems, would likely read as strikingly fresh rather than antiquated. From influence, the next question becomes political power. And this is where the terrain gets far more complicated. Rome's political system, for all its brutality, was built around personal relationships, patronage, and the ability to shift alliances quickly. Modern democracies are different. They're built on institutions designed specifically to prevent any single charismatic individual from accumulating unchecked authority. Term limits, judicial review, an independent press, layers of bureaucracy that don't bend a personality, no matter how magnetic. This is the first real wall Caesar would hit. In his own era, once he held enough military and political leverage, the old constitutional norms of Rome simply gave way. The Senate could posture, but it could not stop a man with legions behind him and public support beneath him. Modern institutions are, by design, far harder to bypass. Courts don't yield to charisma. Electoral systems don't hand power to whoever gives the most compelling speech at the right rally. So could he win an election? Possibly. In the right conditions, over time, with the right message. Could he seize power outright, the way he once did by crossing a single river with a single legion? Almost certainly not. There is no modern equivalent of marching on a Senate that has no army of its own to stop you. Modern states have militaries, security services, and legal frameworks explicitly built to prevent exactly the kind of takeover Caesar once pulled off. This brings us to the military question directly. Because if political power is hard to seize, could Caesar simply build force the way he always had? Here, the gap isn't cultural, it's technological, and it's enormous. Caesar's genius was in commanding disciplined infantry, reading terrain, and outmaneuvering opponents through logistics and timing. But modern warfare doesn't reward battlefield presence the way ancient warfare did. Wars today are fought with satellite reconnaissance, precision-guided systems, cyber infrastructure, and command networks that coordinate across continents in real time. Even Caesar's greatest tactical instincts, speed, deception, adaptability, would need to be relearned almost entirely from scratch. Speed today means data transmission, not cavalry. Deception means information warfare, not decoy campfires. He would not be outmatched because he lacks intelligence. He would be outmatched because an entire technological ecosystem stands between strategic thinking and battlefield execution. And mastering that ecosystem takes years most conquerors never get. There is no version of this scenario where one man, however brilliant, raises a private army capable of challenging a modern state. That door is simply closed, not by law alone, but by physics, infrastructure, and cost, which raises an important shift in the story. If Caesar cannot conquer through force, then the entire premise of conquest has to be redefined. And this is where governments would start paying attention, not because of an army, but because of pattern recognition. Modern intelligence agencies are built to identify exactly the kind of behavior Caesar would likely exhibit. Rapid accumulation of public influence, strategic alliance building, unusually effective persuasion at scale, and a track record, even a fictional one in this scenario, of exploiting institutional weaknesses. Any individual capable of mobilizing large groups of people around a single compelling personality is, by default, flagged as someone worth watching. This doesn't mean Caesar would be stopped. It means he would be observed, analyzed, and likely approached by existing power structures. Modern systems are remarkably good at converting disruptive individuals into predictable, manageable assets. In many ways, they do the opposite of Rome. Instead of one man bending the system bends the man. Still, some modern technologies would represent an almost unfair advantage in Caesar's favor. Mass communication is the first. A single message can now reach millions of people within hours. For a man whose greatest weapon was controlling perception, this changes everything. Data analysis is the second. Instead of slowly mapping political rivalries by hand, modern analytics can reveal social divisions, public opinion, and behavioral trends almost instantly. And finally, network effects. In Rome, alliances took months, sometimes years, to build. Today, coalitions can form in days. For someone who understood people as well as Caesar, that speed would be extraordinary. But for every modern advantage, there are things Caesar would lose forever. He would lose surprise. Information no longer travels at the speed of horses. Every major action is recorded, analyzed, and broadcast almost instantly. He would lose the deeply personal loyalty that once bound Roman soldiers to their commander. Modern institutions are far less personal, and perhaps most importantly, he would lose the ability to rewrite the rules after gaining enough power. In Rome, victory could reshape the law itself. Modern constitutions, international scrutiny, and powerful institutions make that almost impossible. So where does this leave the central question? Could Julius Caesar actually conquer the modern world? Not through force. That path is closed the moment legions stop being the deciding factor in global power. No individual, regardless of tactical brilliance, can outmaneuver satellite surveillance, modern militaries, and coordinated international response with personal skill alone. Not through traditional political conquest either. Modern institutions are specifically designed to resist exactly that kind of takeover. But dismissing Caesar entirely would be its own mistake. Given his instinct for narrative, his magnetism, his patience, and his deep understanding of how systems actually move, Caesar would very likely become someone. Not an emperor, not a conqueror commanding armies across continents, but an influential strategist, a communicator, perhaps even a political operator capable of accumulating real power within existing institutions. He would not conquer the modern world. He would learn how to work it. He would discover its hidden levers, master its currencies of attention, trust, and influence, and once again, rise from nothing. The empire he built 2,000 years ago was made of provinces, roads, and legions. The empire he might build today would be made of something far less visible, something far more difficult to take away. Not land, influence. And if history has taught us anything about Julius Caesar, It's this: give him nothing. And somehow, eventually, he finds a way to turn it into everything.